A woman went swimming. Days later, something began to devour her brain. There is an infection capable of destroying the human brain, with a mortality rate over 97%. A woman arrived at the emergency room with a severe headache, high fever, and several episodes of vomiting. While the medical staff tried to stabilize her, she suffered a generalized seizure. Minutes later, she stopped responding to questions. Her neurological condition was deteriorating far too quickly. Her family explained to the doctors that it had all started just a few days earlier. At first, it seemed like a common flu. First, she had a persistent headache, then a fever, followed by nausea and vomiting. But nothing explained why a previously healthy person was losing consciousness within a matter of hours. Then, someone remembered a detail that at the time had seemed insignificant. 2 weeks earlier, she had spent the afternoon swimming in fresh water. She dove into the water several times, and during one of those dives, she felt water forcefully enter her nose. She didn't think much about it. She finished swimming, went back home, and continued with her normal life. For several days, she didn't have any symptoms. But one morning, she woke up with a much more intense headache than usual. She thought it was a migraine. A few hours later, the fever started. The painkillers barely worked. The next day, she started vomiting. Then something changed. She began to forget simple words. She answered with incoherent sentences. The light bothered her. Her family noticed she was confused. Shortly after, she had her first seizure. That's when they called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctors immediately suspected meningitis. The lumbar puncture showed intensely inflamed cerebrospinal fluid. Everything pointed to a serious infection of the nervous system. They started broad-spectrum antibiotics, but there was a problem. The patient kept getting worse. The CT scan showed increasing brain swelling. The pressure inside her skull was rising rapidly. The doctors reviewed her entire medical history again and asked themselves, had she traveled recently? No. Had she suffered any trauma? No. Had she been in contact with any animals? The answer was no. Then that detail came up again. She had been swimming in warm freshwater just a few days before. That completely changed the diagnosis. The doctors began to suspect an extremely rare disease, primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. The culprit was Naegleria fowleri, known as the brain-eating amoeba. Unlike many infections, this amoeba is not contracted by drinking contaminated water. It needs to enter through the nose. When water rises with enough pressure into the upper part of the nasal cavity, the amoeba can attach itself to the olfactory epithelium. From there, it begins a journey that very few microorganisms are capable of making. It follows the path of the olfactory nerve, passes through the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, and within a few hours reaches the olfactory bulb, the first structure in the brain responsible for the sense of smell. That's where the real problem begins. The amoeba not only multiplies, it also releases enzymes capable of destroying nervous tissue. As it advances, it consumes brain cells and triggers a massive inflammatory response. The immune system tries to stop it. Thousands of inflammatory cells reach the brain. But that response also produces massive swelling. And the brain has a problem. It can't expand. It's trapped inside the skull. Every millimeter of inflammation increases the pressure on healthy brain tissue. That explains why the headache becomes unbearable, why vomiting, confusion, seizures, and finally coma appear. The doctors immediately started one of the few available treatments. They administered several antimicrobials used against free-living amoebas and tried to reduce the brain swelling, but the damage was already too advanced. As the days went by, the inflammation kept increasing. Her neurological reflexes began to disappear. She needed mechanical ventilation. Finally, she died from massive brain swelling secondary to primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. Today, this infection is still extraordinarily rare. Very few cases are reported each year, but when symptoms appear, the disease usually progresses extremely quickly. The mortality rate exceeds 97%, not because medicine can never fight it, but because by the time the patient starts having a fever and headache, the amoeba has already reached the brain and the damage is usually very advanced. The good news is that this infection almost always requires contaminated water to enter through the nose. That's why avoiding having warm, fresh water forced up your nostrils, using nose clips in risky situations, and avoiding submerging yourself in warm waters of unknown origin are measures that can further reduce a disease that, although extremely rare, remains one of the deadliest known brain infections. And that's precisely the most unsettling aspect of this disease. It doesn't need an open wound, it doesn't need you to drink the water, it just needs a small amount of water to enter your nose at the right moment. After that, it can progress silently for days while the person goes on with their life, unaware that a microorganism is already traveling along the olfactory nerve toward the brain. When the first symptoms appear, an intense inflammatory response has already been triggered, causing the pressure inside the skull to increase rapidly. And once that happens, every hour counts. Fortunately, the infection is still really rare. Millions of people swim every year without anything at all happening. But knowing how it happens allows us to take very simple measures that further reduce a risk that is already very low. Because in the case of Naegleria fowleri, the best chance to beat it is still to prevent it from reaching the brain in the first place. If you liked the video, give it a like and subscribe for more content like this.